Welcome back to Sakimas Ridge Homestead. In today's video, we'll be replacing the power steering gearbox on the 2000 F350.
Hello, and welcome to our channel. We're glad you're here.
Let me try and bring you in here and show you what's going on. You can kind of see clearly here the pitman shaft coming down off the box and the drag link. They're pretty wet. It's not leaking real bad today, but I think when we were towing the fifth wheel and I was doing a lot of correcting to back up, it was leaking pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and replace the box. I'm pretty sure the box is held on by these 3 bolts that come through the frame. Box itself sits on the other side of the frame. Got these 2 lines right here that'll have to come out. This black plastic cover has to come off. The connector for the steering shaft coming down from the wheel is right in here somewhere. That'll need to be split. And somehow I'll get that out of there. So we'll get started on it and see where we end up. Okay, we're going to start underneath here. We'll remove the cotter key. From the steering linkage. And hopefully I've got the right size wrench. Once we get this off of here, we'll just use the hammer to hit the pitman arm a couple times to get this link to drop. There we go. Okay, with that loose, we can start taking the box out. I think that's when the fun's going to start. Well, what I decided to try, I took the battery box and the air cleaner box out and the one intercooler tube off so I can see down in here. What we're looking at down in here, this is that plastic cover we saw from below. It'll need to pop off of this line. Okay, now that I've got that popped loose, we'll slide that up out of the way. And I was incorrect. It's not 2 bolts. This is all riveted together. There is 1 bolt right here, which I don't know if I can get a clear shot on that or not. Maybe this way. Now right there is a bolt. We need a 13 millimeter socket to get on that bolt and loosen that bolt up. I want to apologize for the camera bouncing around. There's no way I can use a tripod up here and get a good shot, so I have to kind of hold the camera with one hand and work with the other. So let me loosen this up off camera and we'll pop this joint up off of here. Okay, the bolt is out and I've already taken a screwdriver and pried this back. There's the end of the shaft coming from the steering wheel. That shiny spot is where the bolt was at, and I don't know how well we can see it, but there's a splined section here on the top of the gearbox. The bottom of this is flat. The rest of it is splined. So the inside of the bore on this joint, the bottom of it's flat, the rest of it is splined. That's how you guide it on there. I'll show it better to you once we get it out. Next thing we need to do is take these 2 lines loose. I think that might be easier through the wheel well. We'll try the wheel well. If that doesn't work, we'll have to come up top up here and get them. Okay, this might not be too bad through the wheel well. Don't bump the camera too much. There's our 2 lines. Pretty much you can see that there's the edge of our spline shaft. So we'll get on these and remove these lines. And I suppose before I get too far I should put a pan under the truck to catch the fluid, because I'm sure some's going to drip. Looks like it should come out of there. Yeah, it's coming. It's just hanging up on the O-ring. Okay, so there's that one out. And I don't know if you can hear that draining in the pan or not, but I'm glad I put that pan there. See if this one's the same size. It is. Put the line wrench back on to break it loose. That one feels pretty loose. Okay, that one's loose too. Pop it up out of there. Alright, both lines are out. Next thing we'll need to do is remove these, there it is, these 3 bolts. Okay, those appear to be 9/16. Let's see if this little impact will do it. There's one. Two. We'll take this one slow because I'm not sure if that thing's just going to drop out of there or what. Okay, 3. So it is now loose. I'm not sure if you saw it fall back when that bolt came out. All 3 bolts are loose. So I'll have to crawl underneath and see if I can get it to come down from underneath or out of the top. I'm not sure which way it has to go yet. Okay, I'm sure it's probably not the best view for you, but I'm underneath here. Oh, my plow stuff's in the way. It's not helping me at all. Looks like it's going to come down this way, but it's heavy. So try not to drop it. Okay, it's in the pan. Okay, here's the gearbox out of the truck in the pan. Need to get this nut off the pitman arm. This 1.25 inches is tight on there. I'm assuming it must be a odd metric size, which I don't have. So we'll try and zing this off with the 1.25 inches. Okay, that came right off. Remove the lock washer. Now we need to pull this pitman arm off the steering box. Normally you use a pitman arm puller, but the gap between here is not wide enough to go over my shaft. So I'm going to try and use this 2-jaw puller and see if it'll work. It should. There we go. There we go, popped it right off. Now, similar to the input shaft that's got the flat and the splines, this is splined, but it's got, at every 90 degrees, it's got a wide spline. So that will, pitman arm can go on this way, or this way, or that way. That's the only 4 ways it'll go on. Obviously we want it facing the front this way. So we'll take everything back to the new gearbox, or I'll just move this out of the way and bring the new gearbox up here, and we'll put the pitman arm on the new gearbox, tighten the nut down, and get the new gearbox up in the truck. Okay, here's our replacement gearbox. You can see very well, but there's that flat part of this spline shaft I was talking about when it was inside the truck. This was down, so with the box upside down it should be up, so we're pretty close to where we need to be. This groove here is where that bolt that goes through the joint stays. So that groove there is what keeps that joint from ever sliding off of here. So we'll go ahead and install our pitman arm. It's facing front the way we need it. Lock washer back on. And I went ahead and threw the pitman arm in the parts washer. I didn't see any point in installing a dirty pitman arm on a clean box when we're trying to see if it's leaking. Putting a wet, leaky pitman arm back on there doesn't make much sense. So we'll tighten this back up. Wipe that nut off again. And that gives us a nice clean gearbox ready to go back in the truck. And if we flip it over, there's how it mounts in the truck, but at an angle. So our flat for our shaft is down like it should be. We're going to have to pop these 2 caps out of here. That's where the lines go. We'll put these caps in the core because it has to go back to the parts store. This rebuilt gearbox cost $159. The core charge on it was $223. So they definitely want the core back. The core charge was more than the rebuilt part itself. So we'll be making sure that that core goes back tomorrow. But I'll crack these 2 loose, and we will try and shove this up into position and get the bolts in it. This might be the hardest part of the job. Okay, well, I was unable to film putting it back up in there because it required 2 people. So I just brought the box up from the bottom, and Paula came out and got the bolts started. So we can go ahead and get these 3 bolts tightened back up. Here's the 2 plugs. So I'll remove these 2 plugs out of the top of the box. Stick those in the old one. And it came with a bag with 2 O-rings in it. So I'm going to go up top and change the O-rings on those 2 lines. Try and stick the lines down in there and get them started. Okay, this part's pretty straightforward. Just put the lines back on in reverse order. Do this back line first. Then we'll bring the front line over and put it on. Actually surprised we weren't leaking out of these lines because the O-rings that come out of there were pretty chewed up. But I don't think there's much point in filming this part. You kind of know the idea here. We'll just tighten this line up like I said, bring this other line over, put it in and tighten it up. Okay, there we go. Both lines are installed, tightened up, ready to move back to the top and install the shaft back onto the spline section. Okay, we'll just take our end joint here. And as you can see, if I put it on this way, it doesn't go on. But if I keep a little downward pressure on it and turn it, as soon as I get to that flat spot, it just lines right up. And we will work that down on there. I may have to get a screwdriver and pry it on all the way, but I'll do that off camera. Once again, I can only have one hand here. Now something that's pretty important to remember too is you cannot spin this shaft once it's off the gearbox. I'm not sure if this truck has it or not, but most airbag equipped vehicles have what they call clocking, which the steering wheel knows when it's in the center and when it's not. So if the steering wheel is turned all the way one way, it may not deploy the airbags because they're unnecessary, or they'd cause more damage coming out. So if you spin this shaft when it's not hooked to the steering box, it can mess up that clocking in the steering wheel. So it's very important not to let this rotate when it's out. Well, I actually had to get a small hammer and tap that to get it to go on. Real light taps, and it slid right on. Got our bolt back in and tightened up, and we just need to take our cover, slide our cover back down, and it will snap on the one line here. Once again, I don't think I can do it with one hand. I'll be right back. Yep, 2 hands, and it snapped right up on there like it should be. So we're done at the top, except for putting everything back together. Like I said, I've pulled the intercooler tube out, the air cleaner out, the air cleaner box, and the battery and battery box have all came out so I could access down in there. It's not that hard to get out, and it's probably made it way easier than trying to do it all through the bottom. So now we get to go underneath and hook the steering linkage back up to the pitman arm. There we go. I just had to force the steering wheel, or force the steering on the truck over a little bit. Now I can get the nut on. It's a 22mm wrench. Tighten this back up. Okay, that's relatively tight. Find my cotter pin. See when my holes are lined up. Okay, I'll just keep tightening this up a little bit at a time until I can fit that cotter pin in a hole. Always tighten, never loosen. Okay, cotter pin is in. I am reusing this pin because it's not actually that old. I just replaced this tie rod end very recently. So we're in good shape there. I'll grab the grease gun and grease this, and we will start it up and check for fluid leaks and top the fluid off. Yeah, I did start the truck up and run it. It took almost a quart of fluid so far to fill it back up. Use Mercon 5 as the specified fluid for power steering on these trucks. As you can see down in the power steering reservoir, it's pretty foamy because it was low, and of course when the pump started picking it up, it froths it. So as I put the other things together, I'll let it sit for a while and let that foam go down and top it back off. But other than that, the job is pretty much done. I just need to put the intercooler tube, which is laying over there, back in, and the air box and the battery box and battery, which are back there. I need to clean that pump, the core up, put those plugs in it, put it back in the box to return to Napa tomorrow, put the wheels back on the truck, and it should be good to go. I did not see any leaks. You can look down under here again. There's our pitman arm and our steering linkage, all nice and dry. There's a little bit of moisture here from before. I'll have to wipe that off to be sure we're not leaking. And I've got the wheels pointed relatively straight. They may be off just a little. Okay, I think that looks relatively straight, and the steering wheel is relatively straight. So it might be off just a hair because it's, a different steering box. If it is, I don't know if you can see that adjustment right there on this upper link. That is what straightens the steering wheel. This bottom one down here is what sets the toe. That brings the front of your tires closer and farther apart. And then this one up here is the one that straightens the steering wheel out. So if the wheel's off a little bit when I drive it, I'll just have to loosen up the 2 jam bolts there and turn that one way or another to straighten that out. It doesn't affect the alignment at all because that's this adjustment down here. So nothing on the alignment wise has been changed other than maybe the straightness of the steering wheel. So if you've got any questions or comments about the changing of the steering box on an F250 or F350, please put them down below and I'll be sure to answer them for you. Appreciate if you subscribe to our channel, and if you like our videos, please give them a thumbs up. And as always, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful night.